How you doing, Chuck?
Hey, Kevin.
Technical difficulties.
How you doing, Dan? Did you get my note last night? Great, thank you. We'll have to connect. I'll give you a shout at work tomorrow. How you doing, Russ?
I suppose I should check to make sure people can hear me. Otherwise,
yeah.
It'll be very boring 35 minutes.
We
Well,
can't.
you know, it's all a matter of perspective, you know.
That's true. They might like what I don't have to say better.
Kind of a sick sense of humor, but you know, that's
me.
okay. That's okay.
You can put on a beret and pretend you're doing pantomime.
Was that Marseille? Marcel?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Marcel.
Marcel, yep.
Mm.
Can somebody let Tom in? If you can hear me?
Thanks, Russ.
No problem. That means I'm done for the evening. Bye, guys.
Well, it's always a little unnerving when you're sitting in the waiting room, like, are they gonna notice or what do I do?
Well, usually that floating hand does finally get, they go, oh, geez, that's what that is. It's the floating hand of fate,
My video's not on. Whoops.
You never look better.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
I think you and Coach are competing for the darkest picture.
Let me see if I can lighten it up. Oh, I don't know, that's worse.
It helps.
When you spend, 14 hours on the screen, I let it get dark about this time of evening. Doesn't seem to matter what you do for your eyes, they still get all just red
Yes.
by that point.
If you're anything like me, the fact that your eyes have gotten used to focusing at exactly one distance for an hour at a time or hours at a time means that you try to focus on anything else you can't see.
Yeah, on that one.
We all may have vision problems as we get older.
Some of us had a head start on that.
Yeah, I know, I already do.
Well, actually, I have this new optometrist, and she prescribed some, holistic, vitamins and drops. And I'll tell you, geez, it's scary. It's scary good. The whole idea of holistic medicine is just, we have to get back to that, I guess. Sir.
Russ, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now, Chuck.
Okay, good. We've got a bit of. It is off.
I think it's
That's Tracy again, that she can't hear me.
Okay, stand by, folks. We're working on an echo here.
Don't worry about it. Right now. David said you just gotta log off and log back in. Okay, try it again.
Your
Thanks.
computer, is your computer microphone on? Yeah. Somebody's is.
Check.
Sounds like Rose's.
How we doing? Stand by, folks. We're working on an echo here. How's that?
Oh, she's not.
Is it this TV right here?
No.
This is not muted.
The issue is there's a microphone hot. Oh, this one? Yeah. No, the TV doesn't have. Are you positive your microphone is off?
Yes.
Yeah, it is muted. Not your speakers, your microphone. Yeah, it says mute in the corner. I think it might be one of them. I think is yours off? I'm not in Zoom. It's not.
Those of you on the school board and Tom, could you guys all mute for a second? Okay, it looks like everybody's muted. We're still getting a bit of a,
That's the only thing that's not the joke. Is that?
Chuck, that's happened during our school board meetings on a fairly regular basis. And usually it's an open mic somewhere.
check.
Yeah, somebody has a microphone. It's just, it's happening too.
Sorry, everybody. Hold on for a second here. Could it be one of these?
It's somebody's computer. Somebody's computer. That's why that happens. Let's see.
Try again, Chuck.
Check,
She's off.
check. Test.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Sorry for those of you who are waiting for the meeting to start. We're working on a technical issue here at the town hall, but you're in the right place and we're going to track this down.
No, it's not coming out with any.
Yeah, you bet. It's a piece of computer.
Yeah, that's what we were trying to figure out.
Could that be it?
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
your speaker-
Check. Check,
Now it's stopped.
check.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
it.
Great. It was the computer mic, not the Zoom
So
mic.
we just did two things at the same time. I don't know which one it was.
That's what I was saying, it's the computer microphone,
So that's,
not the Zoom mic.
Got it.
Yeah.
we can, so I think we're good to go.
We're good.
Is this the format you like?
Yeah, that's great.
It's cleaned up, Chuck. You know, it happens to us at twice a month. So same thing.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, everybody.
Just to avoid confusion, can just one of you guys let me know who needs to be promoted and not promoted?
That'd be great. Maybe Paula, can you,
4 or 5 people have been telling me.
yeah,
Paula, it's just on-
take direction from Paula. Okay, everybody. Just to confirm once again, school board members, if you can hear me, raise your hand. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, there we go. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Budget and Candidates Night 2022. This is the second of 4 events in the 2022 Hartford Town Meeting cycle, as called for in our town charter. My name is Chuck Wooster. I'm your elected moderator for these meetings this year. After tonight, we have a couple of upcoming events, including Town and School District Meeting Day, which will be held this Saturday at 10 o'clock. Unfortunately, it will be remote on Zoom again. But that's this Saturday at 10. And then next Tuesday is voting day, the first Tuesday of March, 7 to 7, up in the high school gymnasium. A note from our town clerk: if you are not registered to vote or wish to receive an absentee ballot, you can come to the town clerk's office and request a ballot. You can also vote in person. And you can also register to vote at the polls next Tuesday. All of this is in accordance with Vermont law. So many options here. If you or somebody you know has not voted or wishes to vote, just have them contact the town clerk. And the sooner the better. Okay, special thanks this evening. We have a bunch of people working behind the scenes to make the meeting possible. Of course, Lisa O'Neill, our town clerk, Paula McNulty, who's the town's director of human resources, and a couple of fine folks, Chico, David, and Jackson, who are with us from CATV and making the Zoom possible. We also have a couple of folks tuning in who are becoming part of our Town and School District Meeting Committee, which is fantastic. It's a group that's responsible for helping town meeting run smoothly. And so they're taking notes this year in anticipation that next year we will all be back together again in person. Okay, I hope, as I know everyone else does, that this is the last time we're going to have to do this remotely. It's not as good as the real thing. If you obviously wish to participate tonight, you're already logged on, so that's fantastic. If someone asks you, how do I participate in this meeting? Just go to the town's website and the details are there. You can call in, you can Zoom. There's a variety of options. Just go to the town website or send someone to the town website and they can be part of this tonight. Okay, the purpose of tonight's meeting is twofold. Number one, to hear the budget presentations from both boards and to ask questions about those budgets. And the second purpose is to hear from our candidates who are on next week's ballot and have a chance to also ask them questions. So these two topics are likely going to lead to a long and lively evening all by themselves. If you have questions or comments concerned about other matters that aren't directly related to the budget or to the candidates, we've got Saturday's meeting coming up. And both boards have agenda items that allow for talking about other items of interest to anybody in the town. So if you are interested in another topic besides budget and candidates, hold on to your question and we can take those up on Saturday when we'll have, I anticipate, more time. The Saturday agendas are much lighter than usual because a bunch of the things that we normally vote on in person, we vote on Australian ballots. So we'll have time on Saturday. Okay. A couple of final notes here before we get started. Because we won't be voting on anything this evening for obvious reasons, we won't be using Robert's Rules of Order. So I'll do my best to make sure everyone who wishes to participate has a chance to be heard. Second note for this evening is that town meeting is a great privilege that we enjoy here in Vermont and in New England. The goal here is self-governance, which requires not just voting, but also listening and participating, asking questions, and making sure that you're informed. I urge everybody tonight to keep our dual roles in mind, which is to make sure our own questions and comments are heard, and also to help make sure that other people's questions and comments are heard. So that's our goal for this evening. Okay, so the agenda for tonight, we're going to start off with the budget presentations, first from the school and then from the town. Each presenter has 35 minutes in which to make a presentation and answer questions. I've asked the presenters to try to use no more than their first 20 minutes on the presentation so that we have time for questions. If we don't get to all the budget questions within the allotted time, we'll have time later in the evening to take them up again after we've heard from the candidates. So if we don't get to it all the first time, there will be a second crack at it later on. Once we finish with the budgets, we will have a chance to hear from all the candidates for office and ask them questions. At the far end of the evening, this meeting starts at 7 p.m. and it generally runs until either 10 p.m. or until 2/3 of the original audience is gone. And so my job is to keep track of who's here and what's going on so that this doesn't last longer than most people want it to. So just for everybody's information, right now we've got 73 people logged on and participating in one way or another. So I'm going to make a little note on my pad of paper here that 73 is the number to beat. And I'll do the 2/3 math when I'm not speaking. So great. I think those are the rules of the road this evening. I think all of our AV issues have been worked out. So I'm going to start off by turning this over to Russ North on the school board to make the budget presentation for the school. So Russ, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. Is it possible to do screen share? Because I have a presentation that I was going to go through.
Yes, we're getting the nod. So see what you can do.
All righty, so let me know when I'm ready to go.
You're ready to go. We don't see your screen yet.
Do you see it now?
Still seeing you.
Huh, hold on. More of these technical difficulties. Do I have to accept something?
No.
Oh, yeah.
On the
hold on.
bottom of the page, you should see some green lettering that says share screen.
Yeah,
Click on that and then you'll pick which screen you want to share.
okay. Got it.
Got it?
Yeah.
Fantastic, Russ, we got it.
All right.
You're on.
All right. Thank you, Chuck. Before I start the presentation, I just want to let members of the public know that we are also going to be discussing the budget and taking any questions you don't have a chance to ask tonight or you think of later on is a more detailed discussion of the budget. So we're trying to be as complete and thorough in our presentation of the budget as possible. And that would be in person and on Zoom on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday. And we'll post the link on the listserv, if it's not already been, and then the school board Facebook page. Okay. So basically, when you go look at your ballot, there are going to be 4 questions for you. To elect school officers, basically that's voting for whoever's running. To set our compensation, which has remained the same for a number of years, 75 per meeting, and then 300 and 150 for the chair and clerk. Now, before I go into this next one, people have to promise me they'll stay with me, because there's one reason I'm in an undisclosed location somewhere in Hartford area. Is this is going to be a little shocking. Whoops, before I get to that, if you want to look at the annual report or the school audit, which I would encourage everyone to do, I've posted links on the screen for that. Both are available at the Hartford School District website under the school board page, and the website is hsdvermont.com. Okay, now here it is. Basically, shall the voters of the school district approve the school board to expend $43,687,986 for the necessary spending deemed necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. Okay, so it would result, if approved, of education spending of $18,557.11 per pupil. This represents a 7.63 increase from last year's per pupil spending. And I'll get more into detail. And one thing I want to make absolutely clear is that's not what your tax rate is going up. It is a very convoluted calculation, and I'll go through it. So once we're all over the sticker shock of seeing the 7.63%, I'll go through that. Next, there's a second question. Shall they authorize $800,000 for a capital projects fund for fiscal 2022? And I'll get into the purpose of why this is necessary and the benefits to the taxpayers of Hartford as I go along. And one thing I should have asked Chuck, how are we dealing with questions? Is it all at the end?
Yes, go ahead and roll through, and then I'll take questions. People can raise their hand.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Whoops. This is a little small. I'm not sure how well it translates, but basically, the estimated, and I stress the word estimated tax rate for the upcoming fiscal year, because it's not final until the state and the legislature formalize some figures that are used in the calculation. But it is less than it has been last year and the last several years. And essentially, it's almost the same as when we were in fiscal 2018 and 19. Okay. The $43,887,968 represents a $2.7 million increase from last year's budgeted figure of $40,966,683. And based on representations and discussion, it appears that we're going to be on track for fiscal 22 toward the budget. Okay. Under state law, we have to present it this way, even though the 43 million isn't necessarily what we need to raise through taxes.
You need to take the video of you.
That number is 23 million or 24,976,52, because the difference is what's called local revenues, which include the tuition we receive from out-of-town students, the $1 million we're taking from our fund balance to buy down the tax rate and other types of revenue. So actually, we're budgeting that these local revenues are going to increase by $1.4 million, thus cutting the amount to be raised by taxes to 1.3 million. And I'll go through the calculation, but one way, or the main reason why an increase in spending can result in a lower tax rate is the proposed yield by the tax commissioner has gone up substantially to 13,846 from 11,000. And the estimated yield for fiscal 23, which would be next year's proposed budget, is forecasted to increase again. And that's important because that helps mitigate increases in spending. I mean, so that way we're thinking about the future. Okay, there were some things that affected your tax rate negatively. One is our equalized pupil figure went down by 26.5. This figure does not represent the actual number of students in the Hartford School District. Various levels of students are counted or weighted differently. For example, a high school student is weighted more heavily than a kindergarten or first grade student. And there's other factors that for what students where English is a second language or on free and reduced lunch. So it's a very convoluted type calculation. And so, well, we don't like to see this number decrease. It isn't necessarily an indication that the number of students have decreased. It's just maybe the blend has changed. The other thing that adversely affects the tax rate is what's called the common level of appraisal, or CLA. That decreased to 86.76% from 93.33. What this is supposed to represent is an approximation of how much Hartford's grand list reflects property's current values. And it's based on a 3-year average of sales. And I suspect that this number is going to go down even further next year, because in the calculation for this year, as I understand it, we're still dealing with a pre-COVID boost year type thing. Whereas next year, that'll be removed. And once the number gets below 80%, that will call for a town-wide reappraisal. Okay, so in calculating your tax rate, we take the 24 million and divide it by the 1,345, and that's how the 18,577 is calculated. We then divide that number by the yield. And the yield is a figure that represents if every property across the state were, let me phrase that, if on every property we set a tax rate of $1, which is the statutory minimum for the state. So if every property was taxed at $1 per thousand, it would raise 13,846. So then that comes to a rate before adjustment by the CLA of 1.3403. Then we divide that by the CLA, and that's how we get to the 1.5448 for the projected tax rate. And that, again, that is less than it was last year. It was 1.69 per thousand last year. And you can see we're not spending money on fancy graphics here in the school district. This was compiled by me, so it's really hard to read, but basically, I'll go through that. To cut to the chase, if you had $100,000 property, or for each 100,000, we're projecting your taxes are going to go down $87.64. And if you qualify for what's called in the state income sensitivity, meaning your property taxes are adjusted based on your income level, the decrease for someone who who has what's called $50,000 of household income, it would be about 15%. What are some of the main drivers of the spending increase? Large part of it is salaries and benefits. That's about $1.5 million of the increase. Other areas of the increase include food services. If you've been to the grocery store, you know the cost of food has gone up. And also, it's more expensive to hire people because we see all across the area help wanted signs and signing bonuses and this, that. So the food service has to be competitive to bring in people. And two of the last factors that really driving the spending increase are in last year's fiscal budget, the school board made a conscious decision to limit repairs and maintenance to an absolute minimum. And now in this proposed budget, we are bringing it back to a more normal or historical figure because it is not prudent to continue to defer maintenance, because then we get in a situation where it gets so bad, we're going to have to maybe issue a bond for repairs. And we, as a district, we have worked really hard to maintain our buildings so it wouldn't happen that way. Okay. And transportation is up, and other student services are up, like for mental health and that kind of thing, as we continue to deal with the effects of the pandemic on our student body. Okay, of the $2.7 million increase, $1.4 million of it relates directly to educating our pupils, whether it's special education that's projected to increase by 500,000 or general education by about 750,000. And I meant to say, all these graphics I'm showing are much clearer and better presented in the annual report, which is posted on the district's webpage, as I discussed earlier. The tax department has an online calculator that allows you to calculate what your property tax adjustment is likely to be. And I provided the link here, and we can post it. We can discuss it, or we'll have it available in the next board meeting, and we also post it because it's a handy tool for those of you who may not have your tax return done, but are curious to see how am I going to be affected and what will my property tax credit be? Okay, now getting into the $800,000 that we're proposing to set aside for the capital improvements fund. Voting for or against this reserve will not affect the tax rate. As many of you may be aware, both the Ottaquechee School and Dothanbrook School suffer from problems with their roofs. And this was from the start, right from the get-go. And while there was an insurance award made, unfortunately, that was spent. So that is no longer available to us. And it's projected, and these are 2020 costs projections before things got really crazy in the construction market. For the Ottaquechee School, we were projecting about $850,000 would be needed to repair the roof. And the reason it's so high is that it's going to be a major process. It's going to involve redesign, putting in structural materials. So it's not just replacing some shingles that we might do in our own homes. Some of the work has already been done at Dothanbrook, which is why that is projected only, I say, at $500,000. And by putting it in the reserve, the board intends to then because the work needs to be done and the clock is ticking. I mean, we've been very fortunate, but there's no guarantee that there won't be a problem later on. So we're trying to balance that with the market right now. We're going to look to see if things return more to historic norms in the future years, so we can be prudent with your money. Because we don't want to, even as badly as these need to be done, we are cognizant that we need to be careful how we spend the district's money on your behalf. And that's the end of my presentation.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Russ. Okay, I'm sorry to report here that we're continuing to have technical difficulties on our end, and we're having trouble getting some people into the meeting who want to be. So we are working with on the tech end here to see if we can get that to happen. So apologies for those of you who are waiting to get in. Okay, so chance here to have questions of Russ and school board members. If you're interested in asking a question, please feel free to raise your hand. I'm kind of scanning my list here of 76 people. We've got a question here. So first question from Mary Kay. I'm going to ask you to be unmuted, and go ahead, Mary Kay.
Hi, Chuck. Thank you very much. I was just wondering if Russell has an idea of what the actual tax increase to us might be. It's 7.63 on his slides, and that's likely to go down. Is there an educated guess at what we're looking at?
Actually, your tax rate is going to go down by like 0.2%. So it's going to be slightly less than it was last year.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mary Kay. Next hand up is from Jeff Arnold. Jeff, go ahead. I gotta unmute Jeff.
Yeah, I had to hit buttons over there to unmute myself when he allowed me to.
Okay.
Mary Kay, go ahead and put your mute back on. Great, Jeff, you're on.
All right, thanks. I have a question about the 26.5% decrease in the number of pupils. You said it was due to a blend of students and counting like nursery school students as a half a student or something like that. So what was the actual number of students that went to the school last year, and how many are enrolled this year?
I'll defer. Tom, can you answer that question?
Yes, I can. Let me pull up my enrollment sheet. 1 second. So the enrollment right now, you asked for last year, January 18th, 2022, the total enrollment is 1,754. So let me see, last year at this time, it was 1,715, so 1,715. It's fluctuated quite a bit.
But that's not a 26% decrease.
Well, and then we had quite an increase for this year. So we've had a lot of ups and downs with the pandemic. It's really hard to tell right now what's causing that.
But Tom, you said 26.5% decrease in pupils, right? And then
the 6.5 decrease in the number, not the percentage, but the number.
The number of pupils. So just that difference of 40 pupils about is a 26% decrease in the numbers? That's not right.
No. It's the total, the equivalent count went down by 26 and a little bit pupils. Not by 26%.
26 individual pupils. Oh,
yes.
Oh my God. All right.
We did not lose a quarter of our pupils.
That would be awful. No, we didn't.
Yeah, right. You'd have to lay off some teachers maybe.
And And Jeff, the enrollment has been hard to put your finger on because some people have been keeping their kids home, and people that have had compromised adults or family members. So it's been a little hard to manage during the pandemic. I'm sorry about that, but the numbers have fluctuated much more than
Well,
normal.
26, I don't know what percentage of that is.
Yeah,
that drop.
not very much.
And I mean, you must be going up and down. What we were at one time at our highest, what we had 2,500 people or kids going there back in the 80s or something like that.
Oh yeah, probably. That was before my time, but
since you've been the superintendent, what was it the year that you first started working?
let me look. I have that.
And Jeff, while Tom looks at that, the difficulty here is, for example, an elementary school student, or let's say a preschool student, is only counted as 0.25 of a student. So the mix of students also factors into why an actual count of 1,700 results in an equalized pupil count of 1,300. Because you're right, the math seems mind-boggling, and the state is talking about changing the weighting system to better reflect the actual costs of certain types of students versus other types.
Wait a second. So you're telling me that this 1,715 students only are counted for by the state as 1,300 students?
Yep.
Oh my God.
Okay. Tom, do you have an answer on that, or?
The first number that I have back in September of 2011, which is the year I started, the total enrollment was 1,953.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. I've got some other questioners here that I want to get to. If you could read that.
Bye.
Okay. Next question I have, I just have a phone number here, 802-281-8010, or go ahead and unmute on your phone. You're a phoned-in caller here. Yeah, I think you're live. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, tell us your name and where you live.
Hi, my name is Dan Salmi and I live in Wilder. How are you this evening?
Great, thanks for joining us.
I just have a quick question. I hear a lot about tax rates, and I was just curious if a reassessment was involved in the rate prior to calculating this, and if so, what the percent change was. That's all.
Well, we haven't had a reassessment yet, but that's what I was talking about in the common level of appraisal. So the value of the properties does factor into it, and we may have to have a reappraisal in the foreseeable future, but there hasn't been one yet. So
do you know when the last one was?
Wasn't that long ago.
Okay, so that's not calculated into the math equations that I'm hearing this evening then.
Well, it is, because once the reappraisal happened, everyone's assessed value reflects the reappraisal. And the real estate market has been so superheated, though, even though it wasn't that long ago, houses are only valued about 86% of what their true market value is. And I know of anecdotally of examples where the disparity is much higher type thing.
Correct. I can agree with that for sure.
Yeah, it's a good question, Dan, and I know that there are parameters, and once the town moves outside those parameters, so there will be a reassessment. So given what's happened in the real estate market, I'm sure that's going to be sooner rather than later.
Right, because obviously if somebody's lived in their house for a long period of time, even if their tax rate's gone down, if it's been reassessed, it could still be a significant hike in dollar value. And that's what I was concerned about.
Yep, exactly right. Okay, thanks, Dan. I'm going to go on to my next question. If you could remute, that would be great.
How do I do that?
It might be however it's a star, maybe a star or something on your phone.
I'll just hit end. Thank you so much for hearing me.
Okay, yep, thanks, Dan. Okay, our next question, I've got Lanny here. Lanny, go ahead. You're next on the line. See your hand is up, Lanny. Are you, if you can hear me, go ahead and unmute and you'll be next up.
Okay. Yeah, I
Great.
just had a question. Russ, can you pull up the figure that you used on the calculation again? I had one question I wanted to ask about the number you had there, if you wouldn't mind.
Not at all. I think I can still share. So,
Yep, we got it.
and I'll just have to get there. Hold on, please. Whoa, 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 whoa. I think I need to go to the tech center to take some Excel or PowerPoint.
It was the yield, the question on the yield, I think it was the question. I
Okay,
had.
yeah.
Can you explain that yield number for me again? It just didn't make sense what you said.
Okay, yeah, because I
want to make sure
walked
I heard it again.
around it a little. So yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, Lanny. Basically, the 13,846 represents what per pupil spending would be supported if all properties, at least on the education side, were taxed at $1.
So that seems, it was like 13,000. So there's
Yeah.
more than 13,000 properties in the state of Vermont. So that doesn't compute right.
Well, okay, the state, it goes through a number of convoluted calculations, but that's what they're saying, that the total of all the properties in Vermont assessed at $1, then you divide it by the number of students would support, or you support spending of 13,846.
The number of students statewide, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
Projected,
more sense.
yeah.
That makes more sense statewide. Okay, thank you. I just didn't understand that 13. Okay, that is my question. Thank you very much.
You're
Great,
welcome.
thanks, Lanny. Russ, we seem to be stuck on a blank page. Can you
Yeah, I know.
unshare-
I'm trying. I'm gonna stop sharing that way. There we go.
I think there's going to be a long line at the tech center of people needing help. It's going to start with me. So great. Thanks, Lanny. We got you there. Next person I have in the queue is named Stephen. Stephen, if that's you, go ahead and unmute and tell us your full name and where you live. Okay, looks like his hand went down. Okay, great. At present, I have, okay, nope, Stephen, you're back. Your hand is up. If that's you, go ahead and unmute and tell us your name, where you live. Okay, folks, I'm so sorry. We're having a tough evening here. The good news is we're not voting on anything tonight, but the bad news is this has been a bit of a distraction.
They have to unmute themselves.
Yeah. So yeah, Stephen, if you're there, go ahead and unmute. An additional issue we're having is that we're having trouble getting our next presenter into the queue. So if you do have questions, anybody, about the school budget, this is an awesome time.
Oh, throw me under the bus, Chuck. Go ahead.
Exactly. So Russ, if you could vamp here, actually FX Flynn has come forward. FX, go ahead and unmute and ask your question. FX, are you there?
There he is.
Okay, yes. It just takes a minute for the unmute to come up, Chuck.
Okay, great.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that has not been said tonight that I would like to say is that when we vote that $43 million school budget, you know, we are telling the state the amount of money that we need from the state education fund, which comprises not only the property taxes that residents pay, but also the property tax that non-resident and businesses pay on their properties, and a contribution from the sales tax. So it's a three-part funding system. And as far as the residential tax rate goes, the state there's been a lot of discussion about the convoluted figuring that the state does. And the entire intent behind that is to assure fairness across the state so that towns can't game the system by, say, undervaluing properties generally. That's where the common level of appraisal comes from. And it is, I think, the main thing that that we can take away tonight is that the property tax rate for residents for paying into the state education fund is actually going to be going down. Now, as somebody pointed out, if your property appraisal goes up significantly, then a lower rate may mean that you're paying more than you did. But given the fact that the appraisals have not caught up to the COVID bump, at least this year, we're in a situation where we're going to get more bang for the buck. And I really want to express my appreciation for the Hartford School Board and everybody who's been on it for so long and has done such a sustained job of really providing excellent guidance for the school system. And I really want to thank Tom DeBalzi for sticking with it now for over a decade, and thank him for that. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Great, FX. Thank you very much for those comments. We have a few more minutes here on the school portion of the budget. Any other questions for Russ or the school board? Looking for hands here. Yes, I see Jeff. No one else is in front of you, so let's give you another crack. Go ahead and unmute, and we'll hear from Jeff Arnold again.
It's like FX says, it takes a while for the unmute software to show up.
Got it.
So, so we're actually going to see a 1.5% decrease. It's going to be in negative numbers this year.
That is the projection. I mean,
that's never, has that happened in the school history? I've never seen negative numbers. It has,
Jeff. Yes.
Recently?
Yes, I can't tell you exactly, but within the last few years,
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
I almost think last year was another example of a decrease.
Well, it should be there on your chart.
Yes,
nobody can see.
Thank you for pointing that out, Jeff. I appreciate.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Great, thanks, Jeff. I do have another question here I want to see if I can get to, so go ahead and remute. And the next person on my screen is Daryl Herrick. Daryl, if you're hearing this, go ahead and unmute, and we'll pause here for a few seconds while we let that go through. Yep, go ahead, Daryl. Tell us where you live.
I live in White River, just down the road from you.
Great. Thanks, Daryl. You're on.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the $800,000 bond for the schools?
It is not a bond. No, it is not a bond. It's setting money aside so we do not have to borrow money to make the repair.
But the $2 amounts that you showed would be significantly more than the $800,000 to do both.
Okay, yes, that is true. But we're not necessarily setting the full amount aside this year. We may have to cover the other costs through the normal budget. At this particular point in time, we do not anticipate asking for any bond money in the foreseeable future. Of course, that can change depending on circumstance, but we're not, as we go forward, we're very cognizant of not trying to avoid bonding wherever possible.
Is it a fair question to ask what happened to the money that you mentioned a settlement in the structural or engineering of the buildings themselves? Is it a fair question to ask where that money went?
It's a very fair question. I can only make a presumption since I was not on the board when that happened. It was probably used either to do other repairs or to buy down the tax rate.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody on the school board with a longer memory who can speak to that? If not, that's fine.
I was not present at the time, but my understanding was that the money got diverted from repairs to being spent on other things. But not having been on the board at the time, I don't know.
So basically into the general fund.
Mm.
Yeah.
If I may, Mr. Moderator, just make a very quick comment on the state education portion of the budgeting piece that Russ explained so well through his report. There is another piece to this calculation that very well could even reduce the rate more. The educational fund has had its highest revenue increase in memory, and the thinking is from the legislature is that we will try to do what we're doing with our budget, is buying down part of the tax rate. So that means that in addition to the work that our board has done, the state very well will be adding to that decrease.
Great, thanks, Coach.
Chuck, can I point?
Yeah, please.
One of the questions, the annual report, which is not out in hard copy, but is on the website, as Russ indicated. In that report, in the school section on page 21, just after the school summaries, is the entire history from 2002-3 school year to the present, the approved budget and the increase percentages over all those years, so you can see when it went up and when it went down, but several times it went down. So Mr. Arnold can refer to that, and other people listening can refer to that. It's a very, very handy chart that the finance department creates for everyone.
Tom, that's great. In fact, the hard copies are out.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet, so.
Yeah. If anybody wants a copy that doesn't have one, Town Hall, any of our village libraries, all good places to get a copy. So these are available. It's familiar looking on one side, the school, flip over, town on the other side. So these are available.
You can get a lot of that enrollment information too from that report. That's much more accurate than what I was quoting.
Okay, we've come to the end of this part of the program, so I'm going to wrap it up. And unfortunately, we're continuing to have some major issues here getting our next presenters and select board members into the meeting. So what we're actually going to do here is we are going to close the meeting and end it, and then ask everybody to log back on. Just give us like 60 seconds and then try to log back on. It's going to be the same link that you used before. We're just going to refresh the system and start it again so that we can get everybody on here. So what I encourage everybody to do is we're going to end the meeting now, only technically speaking. So just wait, give us 60 seconds, log back on, and then we will resume with the select board portion of the budget presentation. So really sorry about this, but I think this will get it fixed, and then we can be focused on the meeting at hand. So once again, log back on in about a minute or so. And not to worry, I'm going to set my clock here. We're not going to resume for 5 minutes to give everybody a chance to have a quick break. So we're going to end the meeting now. And then, as I said,